What would you say is the opposite of insecurity?
On the far end of the spectrum?
So we're going from imposter syndrome to where?
Well, if you take it too far, you're going to roll into pride and ego. I mean, it's good to have a healthy ego, but it's definitely damaging to be in a spot where you think you know it all, where you think everybody loves you.
Then where's the sweet spot?
I think everything in life is like sort of a pendulum that swings both sides. You're either going to swing over here to the right, or you're going to swing over here to the left. It's just, I think that's just life.
Welcome to Constructive Interference, where visionaries sharpen visionaries. I'm your host, Rufus Cressend. Diving into the minds of those who dare to dream big and innovate boldly. Join me as we explore their stories, uncover their challenges, and learn from their journeys. Let's get inspired and sharpen our visions together. Welcome, Armando. So happy to have you here. Constructive Interference. Of course, constructive interference is the idea that when two frequencies are vibrating at the same frequency, they overlap and they amplify. So I look at that as metaphor really for getting vision-driven entrepreneurs together in the same room to really dive into whatever the topic of the du jour and to start amplifying that. And it's that iron sharpens iron mindset. Even as a CEO or as a business owner, we can only go so far with the books or from the whatever, going to classes or college, or you have to learn from someone else that's already done it in most cases. Just like anything else in life, you want to know how to get something done, you go ask somebody who's already successfully done it and ask them how they did it. So that's the idea behind the podcast for today. Anyway, so I'm excited to have you. Obviously, you're the one that talked me into this. I don't know if you talked. Did you sell it to me or did I buy it?
You discovered it on your own.
Yeah.
You did.
But you opened the door.
You
opened the door, and but you gave me some encouragement, and I'm like, all right, what's this guy's angle? Is he pumping me up, telling me I'm going to be good at a podcast? Who knows? But you're more interesting in your own right with the podcast that you're doing, Spaghetti on the Wall. And I think you did recently did your 200th episode?
It's about to be. So my wife is she was my first guest. She was my 100th guest, and now she's going to be my two. So I'm just like every 100 episodes, I'm bringing her back.
Why not? That sounds great. So I think I was like your 9th. So
yes, you were very early on.
And I went and looked at it, and I'm like, all right. And that's what I wanted to see. How did I do in podcasts? And I'm like, okay, this is actually pretty good stuff, Rufus. But I want to do over. So we have to have me back on your podcast.
100%.
But I've been listening to your podcast a lot, and you really tap into really interesting factors of different people. So much so I'm jumping around and I'm like, wow, Armando really has a lot of lawyers. It's like, it's like I would not seek out a podcast interview with a lawyer for fun, but you find a way to make it interesting. Okay, so you how did you kind of narrow in on that niche?
So my first podcast ever was during COVID, and I invited a friend of mine who had this like $30 million law firm in Atlanta, and he was super successful. And I was just like, hey man, can we just get on a Zoom call and talk about like what you do and how you became so successful and stuff? And he's like, yeah. And that just kind of launched a conversation. And then 2 months later, he calls me up and was like, hey, do you want to shoot some content for me? I just started a company called 8-Figure Firm where I'm teaching attorneys how to scale their business. And it just was like, just kind of rolled from there. And I was like, huh. And then I just kind of ignored it. And then he started mentoring me, and he's like, Armando, you have a 7-figure business. You just don't know how to get there. And you're creating content, but you're not creating content for yourself. That doesn't make any sense. So you should start creating content for yourself. And I was like, all right. And so I started creating I started with my podcast, and I was like, all right, this is just going to be a fun thing that I do just so that I can stay consistent with content. And I didn't realize what it was going to turn into and the opportunities it was going to turn into. I work with a lot of attorneys because I identify with attorneys a lot. They're super driven. They love to hear themselves talk.
Right. Well, it's interesting from a standpoint of you're giving them an outlet to be proactive with getting new business. Attorneys, in my mind, it's like either you need one or you don't, and you seek one out if you do. It's kind of like a doctor. It's like you don't go shopping for medical advice just out of the blue. Either something's wrong with you and you need a medical professional.
Right.
Same thing with the legal profession. So in order for them to separate themselves from every other legal professional out there, they can have the more reactive type things like the advertisements and whether it be putting something in the paper, article, or write a blog. But this is a little bit different to where they're telling their story and what their niche is. And like I said, it makes it a little bit more interesting. Something that I don't typically find all that interesting is the legal profession. But hey, you know what? But no, for the reasons that you said, it does make it a little more interesting. But I think you're doing really, really great work with them. So that's good. So
I appreciate that. I wanted to come back to one thing you said at the very beginning when you were saying about like that, you know, what's his angle and why did he want to do that, right? Why am I picking you? And you know, we're a member of an organization called the Visionary Forum, and as I've gone through the journey of this forum, I have found more of a connection with like human beings and where I can really help and create impact. And what I've seen is that through content creation and through the process of creating, people sort of start to find their voice and start to find that they start to find their superpower, and the imposter syndrome starts to evaporate. And when the imposter syndrome starts to evaporate, now we can really start to get creative about things and like really find out. We can push the envelope and figure out who we are a lot easier instead of being so afraid of moving forward. And so that's something I think that we do well with my company, is that we're sort of like these personal trainers that force people into creating content. But the byproduct of creating content is this confidence in oneself and discovery of oneself. And that for me is more important than money. Like a conversation that we'll have 6 months from now as your podcast, you know, grows and you become, you know, you step into the seat of podcast host and content creator, you will change and you will discover things about yourself that'll be a beautiful thing. And that's what I'm interested in these days.
So that seems to be a reoccurring theme with a lot of your interviews, is the imposter syndrome. I was like, whatever happened to just good old fashioned insecurity, right? So, but we'll go with imposter syndrome. So that seems to be a continuous journey that you're on. Can you talk a little bit more about your imposter syndrome, kind of where you were, where you are, and where you're going?
Sure. I grew up in a household that was, you know, just super judgmental. I'm different. And I was, you know, no fault of anybody, right? Everybody did the best that they could. But I was made to feel like there was something wrong with me. Hallelujah, my parents never put me on drugs. You know what I mean? Right. Like, because they definitely were forcing, you know, the doctors were forcing it on me. But they didn't, thank God. And so, but I just was in this mode of constantly being judged. And so as I grew up, I became an actor and I hid behind characters. I hid behind performing because it was never Armando. It was Santiago Rodriguez, or it was Rooster, or it was all these characters. And that I could live, you know what I mean? Because if you judge me on that, well, I could just be like, well, that's not me.
It's just a part.
It's just my part. So you can judge that person all you want.
Right.
But when it came to me, that's when I was like, well, no, I don't want to do that, which is why I didn't want to create content, which is why I didn't want to like do those things. But as I'm getting to know you and getting to know people that are like in the Visionary Forum and other mastermind groups and people that are going through doing the hard work of becoming unapologetically themselves and doing the hard work of removing the masks and being this person, I'm finding my perspective is changing. The things I think about are changing. My relationships are more enriched. The things that I'm doing, I feel like are more fulfilling, and it's not just so surface level. And and I'm going to continue doing that work. I'm going to continue empowering people to do that work, to discover who they really are, because I think a lot of times people now are hiding behind like social media, and they don't really want to it's socially awkward and they don't really know how to have conversations.
Right.
And, and it's all, but it's because they don't want to do the hard work of peeling back the onion and really discovering who they are because they're afraid of what they're going to find.
Well, it's not just even the hard work. It's the fear. It's the bravery that it takes to be authentic.
Yeah.
Because if someone really knew who I was, would they run away? Would I be kicked out of the group, or would they point and laugh? So that's and a lot of people don't put themselves out there. And even the more you put yourself out there to be loved, you're going to have an equal amount of people that hate. And most people can't take that type of rejection. They need to be people pleasers. They need to be loved. Yeah. So it's just safer to stay within this persona that everybody likes. And ultimately, what you're doing, I think, is even damaging the potential of being able to find that authentic you, but go deep and have meaningful relationships with the very few people that you should let in to see who you are. So what would you say is the opposite of insecurity?
On the far end of the spectrum?
So we're going from imposter syndrome to where?
Well, if you take it too far, you're going to roll into pride and ego. I mean, it's good to have a healthy ego, but it's definitely damaging to be in a spot where you think you know it all, where you think everybody loves you.
Then where's the sweet spot?
I think everything in life is like sort of a pendulum that swings both sides. Sure. So I don't think that there's ever a moment where you're in that. You might be in that moment for like, a day, maybe a couple of days, but like you're either going to swing over here to the right or you're going to swing over here to the left. It's just, I think that's just life, right? Depends on where you are. Sometimes we have windfalls, some, financial planner here, we have financial windfalls and that makes us feel good and makes us feel like we're on the top of the world, right? And then you have these moments where, we lose business and we're in despair and we think that, is going to keep crashing down. Tom Hanks was on a round table with a bunch of actors and he talked about, I wish I knew the term, this too shall pass, right? Things are going well, this too shall pass, right? Things are going horribly, this too shall pass. Right. And so I think it's not necessarily the sweet spot is, that in between area. If we were saying 0 to 100, in between 40 and 60 is going to be great. You know what I mean? If you're moving too far over here, check yourself. If you're moving too far over here, also check yourself,
right. So I think from an insecurity standpoint or imposter syndrome, I think confidence is kind of that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Saying that, okay, I'm confident with who I am. I'm confident with the decisions that I'm making for my family, for myself, for my business. And there's the need to surround yourself with people who protect that confidence. Yeah. So there's always going to be the haters. There's always going to be the naysayers, the people. I love this saying. It says, people are jealous of what you have. They're not jealous of how you got it.
Yes.
So that's what they see on the surface. So that's where they're going to hate, and that's where they're going to try to bring you down to their level because it's a reflection of their own lack of ability to find their authentic self. So you do need those people in your life that protects the confidence.
But I think you also need people in your life that challenge you to do better. And like the haters, fortunately and unfortunately, I learn from haters too. I actually learn more from haters than I do from people that are applauding me because I don't think I can grow patting myself on the back. But when people are hating or there's something there, I'm like, what's over here? I haven't really looked at that.
I have to think about that because I'm not sure that I think there's certain people that bring down your energy and suck the energy right out of the room and just zap you. But I think what I would say more is I want to be around my truth tellers, not necessarily my haters. The people who are brave enough to say, Rufus, I think you're messing up here, or you know what? Hey, I think you have gone too far on that side of that pendulum. You're a little bit into yourself a little right now, or you're on this high. Enjoy it, but you might want to take it down a notch.
Yeah.
Or hey, with me, I think where I'm too far on that pendulum is where I start giving unsolicited advice. They didn't ask for it, Rufus. It's like you're just pontificating, right?
Well, you know what? Maybe they need to hear it at that point, and if you feel urged to speak it, then why not? I mean, if it's, right. I think it's intention, right? We both know a Beezer, and he's always talking about intention. Like if the intention is not to tear down, if the intention is to, I'm going to give you some advice here, unsolicited or not. You know what I mean? Maybe you need to hear it at that point, and just because you feel like you don't want to give somebody that advice because it's unsolicited, then they don't get to hear it, and then nobody ever shares that information.
Right. And I think that's the truth tellers that kind of hold up the mirror and say, look, here's what I see. Do you see it for yourself? Do you have those people in your life?
Yes. My wife.
Okay.
My wife is that. And I read the book, 6 Types of Working Genius. And she's definitely high on discernment. And she's just really good at holding up the mirror, not necessarily in a damaging way, but like in a way where it's all like, hey, take a look at this, open your eyes real quick. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, you need that in your life because you got this, I think this natural ability to be an inventor and a galvanizer, I would say. Yeah. So you have all these crazy ideas that are constantly in your head, and you're very, very excited about it, very emotional, and that enthusiasm is infectious, and you're like, come on, guys, we're all going to go streaking through the quad. I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea, but he made it sound really attractive. So you need that discernment person in your life to say, okay, hey, let me help you put some of these pieces together and really kind of help you understand what this means and what this looks like. Yeah. Slow down. So I was interested about that. So you are that idea person. You're I mean, when I first met you, we met in a networking organization, and you had a lot of things going. You had that band, you had the graphic novel thing, you have the acting thing, you have the acting coach thing, and you had the production company. What kind of had you narrow in on the production company and just double down and really just focus there?
I'm impressed that you remember all of that. That's really
I'm sure great. I'm missing a lot of things.
No, that's great. Yeah, I mean, look, I threw, no pun intended, I threw spaghetti at the wall, on a regular basis. I've had like 70 jobs in my life, from health and
70
safety
jobs, huh?
From health and safety officer at the Tuscaloosa Mercedes-Benz plant, to singing on bourbon, to I owned a dance studio, to acting, to selling, and I did it all. So I was a shiny object syndrome guy that was like, oh, this, and then this, and then this. The first time I ever was like, man, I've got to finish a project, because if I don't, I will always be known as that guy that just has ideas but doesn't finish projects. And that's when I finished Bourbon Whiz, that movie, and I got it across the finish line. I was like, I can finish a project. When we had a conversation, few years, 3-4 years ago, actually, it's probably earlier than that. That's when we first met at BNI, and we started talking, and you were like, hey,
I randomly reconnected with you on an airplane.
That's right, in Orlando.
And I put you on to Rocket Fuel. Yeah.
And then I read Traction, and I started reading all the books, 10X is easier than 2X and all of that. But I would say, when you were like, Armando, you got to you just got to pick something. Like you're like an octopus out here trying to get everything. And I did find that once I just stripped away everything, I could just focus on one thing. And I mean, look, as a visionary, I still have the challenge of sticking to something. But what I'm doing now is I'm learning to purge and marry and simplify. That's like my mantra every day. Purge, marry, simplify. If it's not working, leave it. If it's an idea that can move into something else and make it better, then marry it. And then simplify the process. Simplify.
Interesting.
And so
purge, marry, simplify. Yeah. I like the simplify. So it's like things, you can't just go get simple. You need to get it all messed up and messy and complicated. And that's what we tend to do is we create this chaos. We throw the spaghetti against the wall, and then we start to look for the simplicity. And the simplicity, I have a mindset of simplicity. You can't add simplicity. You can only remove complexity. Okay. 100%. So you think about light. You can't add darkness. You can only remove light. And if you know how an air conditioner works, you can't make things colder. You can only remove heat from the room. And what you're left with is cold. So the same thing with the issue of the day, the complexity of it all. You start taking things that aren't necessary, and what you're left with is simple. And that's kind of that Occam's razor, which the most obvious and simple solution is usually the right one. But anyway, so going back to, you have all these ideas. Now, I've also heard you talk a lot about this in your podcast, is the self-diagnosed adult ADHD. I think it's ADD. I think you got to go to a doctor to get the H. But and that was before my time too. So I definitely would have been medicated. And some of my cousins were actually medicated. And you think about guys like you and I, it's like that's just neutering us from our creative, our most unique ability and our talent. It's just, it would be an absolute shame, because the epic battles and the epic storylines in my mind when I was a kid with playing with toys or going out there creating these clubhouses would have all just been, come home, do your homework, be focused. And it's just, anyway, so you have this adult ADHD, which is, I think it's very interesting, where people are like, hey, I'm all over the place and I can't focus. I think the truth of it really is that we can focus better than most people. We can hyper-focus, but it has to be something that we're very much into. Things that do not entertain us, things that have no interest for us, sure, we're going to be jumping around to the next thing. And that's where the tenacity for you and I is getting things over the finish line. Yes, we can do it. We're capable, but it's not fun. It's just, so what do you do to kind of keep all those thoughts kind of under control? And what is there a kind of a setting that you go into to get to that hyper focus mindset, to where you really dive deep?
So here's a theory I have about visionaries and why they can't finish projects. Because for me, when I envision something, I see the inception, I see the life of it, and I see the death of it. Right? So I don't necessarily need to see it through, because in my mind, it already exists. So the fulfillment of that already happened. Right. So I think that's my theory on why, visionaries don't like always finish a project. How I get hyper focused on what I need to do is that delegate to elevate quadrant that I do on a pretty regular basis. I'm like, ugh, I hate this. Who can I delegate this to? All right, I hate this. I love this. Doesn't necessarily bring me money, but I love this. So I know I've got to schedule time to do this because it's important, because I love this. And so if I stay in those, if I stay looking at that quadrant of delegate to elevate, what am I good at? What makes me money? What am I good at that doesn't make me money or fills me up? What am I bad at that makes me money? And then what am I bad at that makes me no money? And then I just go through those quadrants on a regular basis, and it helps me stay focused on the things. Essentialism. Have you read the book?
Yep.
So I'm working on trying to just simplify everything. It goes back to that purge, marry, simplify. It's like, every day I'm like, okay, this is the only thing I need to be working on right now.
And similar to essentialism is the subtle art of not giving a
correct.
Right. So, which is a very interesting title for a book, because you think it's about just not giving an F about anything, right? But no, it's like you can only give so many, right? So you got to pick and choose which ones you do want to that are actually meaningful. But once you actually narrow it down to the things that you enjoy doing, things that you like, things that interest you, so you just go sit on your couch? Do you go somewhere? Do you have to isolate yourself? Do you need a lot of noise or background, white noise?
No. I find that when I'm in flow, like the world, like hours can go by, and I'm like in there, like I'm working it out. So I don't need, when I'm working, I'll put music on in the background. I have a big screen monitor that I use that I can see, because it feels like an overview type of situation. And I'm like, I'm totally that 30,000 foot view person. If you start putting me in the weeds, my energy is drained, and I'm like, this is not good. I just need to pass this off to somebody else.
So you can pretty much get into flow in any setting?
In any, like, your environment. My office, my studio here is a place where I can really focus. At home, I cannot. I find it very hard to focus at home. On a plane, I can really get a lot of work done. Like I'm just, and that's really great because I can't get on the phone.
Right.
So it's distraction-free city right there.
You should try fishing.
Or fishing.
That's the only thing that really turns my brain off. But even then, my brain's not that and sleeping. But sleeping, not so much either because I dream. No, it's funny that I was in a focus group in my profession, and the person leading the session is talking about, what do you do to kind of get into the zone to think about business? And I didn't understand the question. And they're kind of going around the room, and people are saying, I like to get in my tractor and, all these different things, or I'll go do this, or I'll go do that, to kind of get into that flow mindset to think about business because they're so entrenched in their business. And it got to me, I'm like, I'm telling you right now, I have no idea what you people are talking about. I says, I got to do things to turn it off.
Right.
I'm always thinking about business. Yes. But it's not that it's a burden for me. It's fun.
It's fun.
I enjoy the challenge and the journey that I'm on. The success is just a measuring stick, I guess, along the way that says, okay, you did it the right way. You did it the wrong way. If you did it the wrong way, would you learn from it? And how do you kind of push forward? But it's just, that's when I started to kind of understand I was a little bit different than even people in my profession, which are just very high level technicians, but I still had that entrepreneurial mindset that was like, oh, y'all don't think like this all the time? Because I'm always here, anyway. So
yeah, I agree with you on that.
So going back to, you settled on all these different things, but you settled on the production side of things. What energizes you? What do you get out of doing the production and the podcast and the videos? What does that mean for you professionally and personally?
I mean, I love storytelling. I love creating content. And I really enjoy seeing people grow. I love people finding the confidence and finally crossing over that threshold that goes, yeah, I am a content creator. Oh yeah, I am. And stepping into that, I love to see it. Mm-hmm. I love to see it. It's, it's just an amazing, that fills me. It fills the team, and we can make money as a byproduct. So that's also a good thing.
Yeah. I've always said there's always two types of entrepreneurs out there. Those who like to make a lot of money, and as a byproduct of what they do, they get to serve a lot of people. And there's the type that likes to serve a lot of people, and as a byproduct of what they do, they get to make a lot of money. So you're kind of the latter of the two. It's the passion first, it's the mission, it's the service, and if you do it well, you get to make some money at it as well, which is kind of nice. Yeah,
for me, it was like money was just never such a motivator for me. Like it just never, it never has been. Like I'm like, all right, I know I need it. You know what I mean? But it was never something that just like gets me up every morning. It was like, yeah, let's go make some money. It's like, for me, it's all like, let's go meet some people. Let's go, let's go learn some stuff about something, which is why I love my podcast too. Cause I'm constantly learning. I'm like, wait, what do you think about that? Wait, what's the perspective? That's interesting. Like I'd never thought of that, and it's just, I would never just randomly fall into, I got to sing on the Disney ride, right?
Right.
And on the Tiana's new Bayou Adventure.
Right.
And I fell into it because of somebody that I met, John, your brother, introduced me to BNI. I got into, I met Nick Cepeda. Nick Cepeda is friends with a guy who was helping produce the music. And they were like, oh, we need a male Latin singer. And he's like, I got the guy for you. And then boom, it just happens, right?
What was your part?
Oh, so the dig a little deeper.
Sing it. Do it.
Oh, yeah, it was like, dig a little deeper. Da, ba, 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 ba. You gotta dig a little deeper. Ba, da, ba, 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 da, ba. I don't know all the words.
So did you
right
have
now,
to like put on you'd lay on the thick Latino?
Well, no, not really. But it was weird because I was like, isn't this like a old black lady gospel tune? And it is, right? And they're like, no, we just want to make it like more festive and fun and stuff like that. So I was like, you gotta, and so it took me a second to like get into this character because I was trying to like wrap my head around what this is supposed to sound like. And then, I was just doing take after take. I was just let me, just let it play. I'm gonna find it. And then like I started just playing around. I found the voice and I was like, there it is. And then,
right.
And then it happened.
Now, just to kind of wrap up that part. So I did not experience that ride yet. They were still under construction last time I was in Orlando. And it was like Tatiana's Bayou Adventure. I'm like, that they made from Splash Mountain. So the mountain in the bayou, apparently.
Right.
So I'm like, I have been here all my life, never seen a mountain. The closest thing to a mountain, I think, is Monkey Hill at Audubon Zoo.
Oh, that's pretty tall. It's a pretty tall mountain.
So anyways, anyway, so when you do your podcast, very rewarding for you. So you're able to extract things out of people. What is the it factor that you can leave at the end of the day and say, you know what, I did meaningful work, or this was a good day? Do you have anything that measures that?
I operate just on a grateful basis. I'm on I've got a bit of an existential crisis. No, I wouldn't say an existential crisis, but more of this. I am thinking about life these days and what does it mean, and what happens after we die, and so I'm thinking about that a lot, like every morning, like that, that comes into play. And I just go back to gratitude. I just go back to like the gift that life is, and being happy with the great things that happen, also being happy with the unfortunate things that happen, and the trials and the obstacles and the things that we all try to avoid. But I go, you know what? That's also the things that make us better. And so all of the things that I've experienced in my life that I thought were like, world ending, just, I'm never going to get out of this, were moments that like grew an amazing flower of opportunity. And,
Well, yeah, that's a bit morbid, I guess. I remind myself when I get too hung up on something, in 50 years from now, none of this is going to matter. So try to be a little bit more present. But I'm not going to let you get out of it that easy. So there's certain things that you do that you know that you are better than anybody else at. So you go home, you talk to Shauna and say, you know what? I had a really good day.
I killed it
because of this.
I mean, when I'm closing deals and people want to work with us, is always a good day for me, because I'm like, what we're doing, people value, people want. I can't ask for anything better. I love that. I also love when when people call me and they have the discovery, when they finally go, Armando, I get it. Like the epiphany that they have, the aha, when they go, I didn't understand what you were saying. I completely get it now. And when I get those calls, and it always happens, like 4 or 5 months in, I get the call out of the blue, and it's always like, you were right. You were right. And I was like, that's cool. I'm glad you're here. Now we can move on and talk about like the creative end of things.
Right. I would have thought that about you. I didn't want to lead you too much, but if I had to, if you were asking me how to answer that about you, I think that is kind of where your sweet spot is that the passion for what you do, the journey that you're on, the way you're trying to find your authentic self. We know that growth doesn't happen when you're comfortable, that sometimes you need a little bit of a nudge from someone to get you uncomfortable and to help you find that voice. And I think you bringing that level of passion to people who are not ready to be on camera, that have that imposter syndrome, that I'm not going to be good, people are going to laugh at me. Why would I be on a podcast? Who would want to listen to that? And to help them see that inner genius that they really have, but getting them over that threshold to move forward, and all of a sudden now that you've gotten through to them. I think that's got to be really rewarding, because you're in a position to do that where not a lot of professions can get people uncomfortable enough to start making progress and growth for themselves. So
yeah,
I don't know if I put it into my words. Okay,
I couldn't have said it better myself.
I think that's something that you should measure your day by. That it says, how many people did I get uncomfortable, but in a good way, right?
Sure. Yeah.
You can go walk down the street and get a lot of people uncomfortable. Okay.
No, you're right.
So, but I think in a good way, because like I said, it's. I mean, you think about it from the standpoint is, I have a personal trainer, and if she just let me do what was comfortable when I went to the gym, she would probably not be a very good trainer. And of course, when we do something new, I'm sore the next day. Okay, it hurts. You have to go through that pain, but you know that pain's necessary, and you anticipate it's going to happen, but we avoid the pain, so we just rather not put ourselves out there. But knowing you just keep working that muscle, and then that pain goes away, and actually the fastest way through that pain is to go back to that same exact exercise and go and do it again, and it's excruciating, but all of a sudden now you're better at it. Yeah. And then, of course, every now and then, she doesn't let me get comfortable again because she'll add a little bit more weight. Now, the idea is not to hurt me. It's to have that incremental success. And I think that's where your coaching and your the work that you're doing with people, I think, is really having them kind of discover themselves. And I think that's a gift. So
I appreciate that.
You bet, man. So I got a list here. I'm came prepared, but I'll let you pick the first one. Give me a number between 1 and 100.
100.
100? So what's your beverage of choice? So we're out at a bar.
Water.
Or water. So it's just water?
Water.
Beverage of choice, okay. No cocktails?
I haven't been drinking much lately.
Okay.
If I'm at the bar and and it's a drinking setting, I'll do Diet Coke.
What's your favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Why?
I have so many great memories of Christmas in particular because some years my dad and the family would travel to Puerto Rico from Germany. Mm-hmm. So I got to experience Puerto Rican Christmas. Then I got to experience Christmas in Germany. And I'm from Nuremberg, and like the Christkindl's market there is just a magical place.
I've been.
It's just magical, right? Like you know, the Glühwein and and like just the feel of it. It's just unreal. It's a whole, like, if you haven't done Christmas in Germany, especially in Bavaria, like it's a must do. So, and I have that. My mother's, her birthday's on the 24th, and so we really do it up for Christmas. So I really love the holiday.
There you go. There's another passion that you and I share. So me and my wife got to go to Austria and Germany a couple of years ago, do the Christmas markets, and that's an experience. It was perfect. It was snowing the whole bit. I told my wife, I said, she never experienced snow before. I says, there's a difference between snowing and snow. I said, snowing sucks. I mean, it's pretty and everything, but if you're out and it's snowing, you're just getting wet.
Yeah.
Okay? Snow is pretty. So I know you like the movies as well. So guilty pleasure movie. Come on, what's it doesn't even have to be a guilty pleasure movie. Let me frame this a little bit. What's the one movie that if you catch it at any part that it's on, you have to watch the rest of it?
The Matrix.
The Matrix. Interesting.
Always.
Yeah.
But I love that movie. Forgetting Sarah Marshall is also really good.
Okay, so that's interesting. Those types of movies, they have a series of climaxes throughout the entire movie. So it's so easy because there's, like, for example, Shawshank Redemption. It's like it's all these little mini stories in one overall story. So It's so easy to get caught up because that the story's wrapping up in about 5 minutes, but it leads into another one. And I think that's in Forgetting Sarah Marshall. That's just a classic. That's
I love that movie.
I'm going to start doing one-liners with you, but we're not going to do that right now. Let's see. So what book are you on? I know we share a lot of passion for our books, but what's one that you would recommend? Not everyone is a winner, but what would you recommend?
I love the Little Red Book of Sales right now by Jeff Gittimer.
Okay.
I love all of his content. He says he delivers his books in a really nice, fun way. Mm-hmm. But it's really good. It's my second time reading the book, and it really does keep me focused on like that sales part, because I'm like, I gotta be a salesperson, But he does it in a way that's not like I have to manipulate people into doing. Like his deal is like you have to become the consultant, So if you become the consultant, then that becomes your sales approach. Then people are going to trust you, and sales become a lot easier.
Love it. Well, cool, man. Well, I appreciate you being a part of this with me. How can people find you? How can they be a guest on your podcast?
Sure. I'm super easy to find. If you Google Armando Leduc, you'll find me. LeducEntertainment.com is the name of my company. And if you go there, we also are on all social media sites. So if you want to reach me, very easy.
Very easy to find you.
Extremely.
And what would you say to someone who's kind of podcast curious. I'm not really sure.
Heck
but hey.
yeah, man. I'm going to use that. Are you podcast curious? Let's write that down. If somebody's podcast curious, what I would say is I've got a community on School, Alex Hormozzi's new sort of community building site called School, SKOOL, and I've got a community called the Podcast Producers Club.
Okay.
And it's just an easy way to like come in. There's other podcasters in there, and we meet on a weekly basis, and I just kind of pour into everybody. And if that's something that you're like, well, let me see what that's like, I have a free online course called the How to Monetize Your Podcast, and you can watch that, and it'll show you how to like get started, and
It just seems like somebody needs that nudge every now and then. So we're trying to make it easy for them to find you, but also set the expectation of what they can get out of some of the content that you provided, to where if they're interested and want to learn more, whether or not but are you going to be their truth teller that says, you know what, I don't think podcast is right for you or right for your business? Or are you going to say, here's how you can make it right?
I will always go into how we can and not necessarily how we can't.
Gotcha.
Because I come from an improv background, and in improv you always say yes and. You never say no. Like you always say yes and.
Love that.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks so much, buddy.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Constructive Interference. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow visionary. Keep dreaming big, and remember, the only limits are the ones you set for yourself. Until next time, stay sharp.